Okay, well, thanks for joining us for our conversation with Renée Irvin, who is a professor at the University of Oregon in the School of Planning, Public Policy, and Management. For many years from that position, Professor Irvin has researched and written about philanthropy and nonprofits, most recently with a piece that caught our eye that was published in Nonprofit Policy Forum entitled "How Dark Is It?" An investigation of dark money operations in U.S. nonprofit political advocacy organizations. So we thought we'd see if we can get some time from Professor Irvin to talk about that and issues related to it. But let's just start first, Professor, by me asking you, how you acquired your, I'll say, academic interest, but it could be a more general interest than that in philanthropy and nonprofits.
Yeah, my PhD is in econ, and my doctoral dissertation was a study on renal dialysis patients nationwide and factors in their mortality risk, et cetera, sort of a health econ. And so one of the variables was whether it was a for-profit or a nonprofit renal dialysis facility. So that got me, of course, there was nothing at the time in the econ curriculum about this nonprofit sector even existing, right? So I did my dissertation and then ended up falling into a rough crowd of nonprofit economists.
Okay.
Who we'd gather at a conference. And this, I might add, this group of nonprofit economists included Art Brooks, who later rose to fame. So the rest of us are still toiling in obscurity, but we all remember Art fondly and wish him well.
Did Art play a role in making, you said, a rough group?
We used to, this was back when we were young and fun, but we would go and have nice dinners, go to conferences, go out for dinner. Yeah. So, yeah.
Well, then if I can, passage of time, the term dark money is used a lot, and I think maybe increasingly.
Mm-hmm.
And it is a sphere of meaning, not a point of meaning. I think it's fair to say. But how would you define, and how do you, I guess, really for purposes of this paper that you've just written, define dark money?
For the purposes of this paper specifically, I was super narrow. It was the use of 501c4 social welfare organizations to funnel money through in order to remove the name of the donors from the funding. And the funding goes towards political activities. So most often that's super PACs.
But you acknowledge that others use it you have a different definition that is wider than that.
Yeah, wider than that. I mean, the looser, broader definition is, of course, any funding of unknown origin, any deliberate choice to keep the funding source anonymous. And then a somewhat more specific definition would be routing funding through any organizational entity in order to remove your name as funder. So there are other ways of anonymizing your donation.
There are.
Which I don't really go into.
I'm thinking about, when a private foundation uses a DAF.
Yeah.
For the purpose or having the effect. It's
right.
All that's dark, right? That's a fair characterization.
Yeah, many. I mean, their name is on the organization, Private Family Foundation, for example, and it's listed as a donor to the DAF, but then it's pooled with 2,000 other people, and so you don't know, where the money came from. It just came from the DAF, right? So.
And fiscal sponsors, this is, I guess, a question that'll get off this definitional stuff. Fiscal sponsors are having the effect of darkening, or they can't they? If even only temporarily, which is dark.
That's right. Yeah. I hadn't thought of that, but that's a good one. Yeah.
Okay. Does it matter?
LLCs sometimes, yeah.
Right. Okay. Or what is it? Does it matter if people, I mean, it's usually used as an epithet. I have one more definitional question. I'm cheating, right? But does it matter whether that we be persnickety in our definition of dark money for public discourse or legislation or, should I care what we mean by dark money when we use it?
Yeah. But I mean, there's, for example, if I make a donation to two local political donations, one is to my local library, Save the Library campaign, and another one is to support the bond levy, both are 501c4s, support the bond levy to increase policing downtown, right?
Yeah.
Then I donate there, and then the money goes towards this political activity, and it's not, my name is no longer connected with it.
Yeah.
And so technically that's dark. And a lot of people will say, well, like, what is it? Open secrets.
Open secrets, sure.
They'll list both Sierra Club and National Rifle Association as dark money organizations because they're 501c4s. We can't trace the original donor to its ultimate source. So they wouldn't show up in my study as dark money organizations.
Yeah. All right. So how does one measure dark money?
Well, on to my next page of notes. What I did was I looked for indicators, organizational characteristics that suggested it fit with my idea of a donor as a policy entrepreneur. Like, I want this policy or this candidate elected. So if I'm a donor and I've got lots of money and I'm really resentful of Federal Election Commission limits, annual limits each year, and also I don't want my name on that because everyone knows me because I'm high net worth, then I start this 501c4 and the characteristics that I want are, I don't want a big board. It's too hard to control these people. A lot of them are volunteers, most of them are volunteers. So I'm going to have a tiny board of people I trust. I'm not going to have volunteers. I'm not going to have fundraising expenses because it's all my money, right? And just a number of, I don't have a website. Why bother? I don't have a think tank. I know what my ideas are and what I want to express through my philanthropy. And just a number of indexes. I mean, I could go through all 9 index variables for you, but
right, your study had 9 characteristics, I guess, to help place groups along what I'm going to call a spectrum.
A spectrum, exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
That's
right.
Of the 9, I guess actually, is it easy for you to do the 9 off the top of your head? I don't want to.
I have them all listed here.
Yeah.
Here we go. Okay. You ready?
Yep.
Okay. Number of board members, number of volunteers, staff expenses as a percentage of total expenses. I mean, why, if your 501c4 is a pass-through, you don't need staff. So you're not going to have a lot of staff expenses. Fundraising expenses, they're not necessary. Website, words. So I went and counted website words, which is fun.
Yeah.
Think tank, whether or not you were associated with think tank, whether or not you're associated with co-located shared staff with PAC, for example. A lot of them are co-located. No savings. Because if I'm a donor, I don't want my organization building up savings. It's just a pass through. So money in, money out. Of course, grants to political organizations and lobbyists as a percentage of total expenses. Yeah, that's it.
And all of those but one, I'm thinking of the website one, are from tax forms.
Right.
Publicly available. You
years later, I mean 2 or 3 years.
Well, which is a thing for another, what do I say, show? Right. Okay. But the spectrum of transparency or opacity, we'll get into that, is not for the most part dependent on voluntariness. The spectrum can be constructed, and was by you for this report, on the basis of information given to the IRS,
Right.
mandatorily, by the way. It's not the case that you can make yourself more opaque
Right.
by your own decision. You are measuring opacity on the basis of what's required.
Yeah, what's required to report publicly available data. So unlike an investigative journalist, bless their hearts, I am not, dumpster diving to get my
Yeah.
data.
Yeah. And then well, your spectrum, you rank. Do the groups get scores?
Yeah,
Yeah. Okay.
right.
Who did the best?
Oh, gosh.
And we
You
should
had to
mention
ask
your
me
study
that.
was of a restate advocacy groups in economic policy.
Yeah,
Right.
right. There were two centrist organizations. Like Fix the Debt Coalition was one. I forgot the name of the other. Anyway, they were right near the top, meaning quite transparent.
Right. Okay.
And there was like how do you pronounce it? Ripon. Okay, Ripon Society was right near the top. Anyway, so very transparent. And then you go down the list.
All right. Why don't we finish up with part one there, and we'll delve further into your study in part two.
Okay.